Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we're lucky enough to be joined by Ayana Champagne. Ayana is the Chief HR Officer at Ferring Pharmaceuticals. Ayana, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm good. It's nearly Christmas, so we'll a few more podcasts to go before we break up. So,
Yeah.
Ayana, fill in the gaps. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey to where we are today.
So I joined Ferring about 3 months ago, and time has really flown by. Prior to joining Ferring, I worked for a global manufacturing company called Pratt & Whitney. It's a division of United Technologies. It's a publicly traded company as well. And in that organization, I did HR generalist work for our aftermarket business, and had a great time there. And prior to that, I worked for Eaton Corporation. Eaton Corporation is a diversified industrial, global and publicly traded organization. So my entire career over 15 years has been in a generalist capacity.
Fantastic. So a lot of the time in aerospace and engineering, is that right?
Yes, lots of time in aerospace and engineering, and now about 3 months into pharmaceuticals, so I'm having fun.
I can imagine. So what really compelled you going back to pursue a career in HR?
Well, from the very beginning, I was really interested in HR because of the first company I was introduced to as I was getting ready to graduate from undergraduate school. It was a small private organization that manufactured envelopes, and it was based in Chicago, or it is still today based in Chicago. My undergraduate degree is in finance, and I've always had this affinity for people, process, financial success, not just personally, but driving an organization. And so I had a dream of trading derivatives on the stock market and working with different types of people. And I really didn't know much about the HR function until I met the owners of the Diamond organization, and the rest is history.
Wow. So like many people that I speak to, certainly wasn't the plan, but you ended up in HR.
Yeah, exactly.
So where you are now, obviously you're very new in the role. It's quite an interesting time for you. What are the key focuses for the next 6 months then for yourself?
Well, here at Ferring, we are really focused on growth. We have a huge target ahead of us with double-digit growth, which is certainly something that we've proven to ourselves over the past several years in our history, which is, phenomenal. If you know anything about the pharmaceutical market, usually it's single-digit growth. If you can get close to 10%, that's really great. And so our history has been beyond that, and it's really fantastic. And so we really are focused on, getting there, staying there by being innovative, coming out with new products that focus on women's health and reproductive health, and being a world-class leader in those areas, as well as honing in on and perfecting the areas that we already play in. Mm-hmm. So the organization is going through, of course, the buzzword is transformation. Yep. But really, it's not, my CEO likes to say, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. Mm-hmm. We're really taking the things that are core to our business and fundamental to how we do business, and standing on those things and going even higher. So it's really an exciting time here at Ferring.
Perfect. Sounds like very, what companies aren't going through transformation right now? That's the question, really. I think everyone's going through a transformation of some sort, and I think you have to constantly be innovating and evolving as a business.
Absolutely.
Especially in such a fast moving market like pharmaceuticals as well. So what are you personally focusing on? When you join a new organization, what are the key things that you're focusing on at the moment?
So for me, even though it's been about 3 months or so, I'm still very much focused on learning the business. And I know that that's very common. HR professionals and professionals in other functions and other areas of the business talk about, I have to learn the organization and learn the business. But truly, as an HR professional, it's been fundamental to my ability to come up to speed and to add value as quickly as possible. Not only because I need to understand, what our value stream is doing and what impacts the organization organization greatly and quickly, but also I'm brand new to pharmaceuticals. And so I have a huge learning curve in that respect, but I'm lucky to be surrounded by so many smart people, scientists, and others that are helping me come up to speed and are quite patient with me as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it sounds like from what you were telling me before that you're really sort of going deep inside the business and understanding on a ground level what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And for all of the successful leaders that I speak to, that's one of the keys to success, is understanding it, not just at the top, but really at the ground level, what's happening and what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. Like you mentioned, going along with your sales guys to, the hospital visits, really down to the core of what the business is. It's very important that you have that perspective. So very exciting times ahead.
For sure.
Looking back at your career, could you share one project or transformation that you've been through that stands out to you that you're most proud of? Obviously thinking of a previous one as you just joined the organization now.
Yeah, I am still proud of a few things here at Ferring as well. But I'll certainly give you something that's more historical also. But here at Ferring, it's people come first. That's our philosophy. Yes. And I really have put them at the forefront of my learning. We talk about making sure that we, learn the organization, learn the business as you come up to speed as a new employee. But it's also important to take time to get to know the individual people as much as you possibly can. And that's not always easy to do, and it's not always a quick process, especially if you're in a large organization. But luckily enough, even though we are very globally diverse here at Ferring, it's been quite the journey to get to know the team and get to know key players as well as our individual employees. Now, I'm not there yet, but I do feel quite proud of all the people that I've gotten to meet and gotten to know across the organization, and I've spread myself in all parts of our team, and so I'm really happy with that. It's not a transformation necessarily, other than a transformation of my mind and understanding how the pharmaceutical world works.
So important, yeah.
But definitely important to kind of take that aspect of it and understand who our key stakeholders are, and our patients as well. And then if I think back, to my prior role with Pratt & Whitney, there were many things that the organization supported me in doing in order to step function change the way we did business. And I would say that I'm most proud of the transformation that the global aftermarket team went through as we set up centers of expertise in Singapore, as we looked to develop not only the business talent, but the HR talent and put people in stretch assignments. The leaders of the organization were always very supportive of ensuring that we not only were investing in the business because we were an enabling organization and needed to do so, but also that we were investing in ourselves so that we can continue to sharpen our skill sets and add value to the organization. So there were many things that we did across the board, from an organizational impact standpoint as well as a functional standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Could you share something practical that you did to achieve that within that transformation?
Absolutely. So within Singapore, we changed the culture and we changed the way HR was viewed. And so I would say that in the past, and prior to us embarking on this journey, we were focused on the things that were right in front of us. We were strapped for resources, as most organizations are. We were going through significant environmental factors like cost curtailment and an inability to attract talent because of the competitive workforce. Not necessarily having negative or positive branding in the market, but certainly a lack of branding in the market, and really just trying to drive who we were as an organization and lean into the larger name of our organization, which was United Technologies in the region and and the markets that we were playing in. And so some of the things that we did was we took a step back and we said, okay, how can we create our value story for the organization so they can support us as we move forward and ask for additional resources? How can we show them what good looks like so that they're willing to take the risk and invest in additional resources and cost in a time where there's cost curtailment initiatives happening around the organization? And we did that. We created that value story, and quickly we discovered that there were some early wins that we could lean into and lean on so the organization would continuously invest. We restructured the business in terms of how we were positioned to support the organization. We created 3 legs of the stool, I like to call it, for a center of excellence that focused on total rewards, focused on organizational development, and focused on talent. And then we drove programmatic ssolutions in the areas where they mattered most. So to give you kind of a statistic, we went from, I can't even remember the numbers right now, but there was a significant number of expats that we had in country in Singapore, and we reduced that by more than 50%. We not only did we reduce the number of expats by a significant amount, but we also prepared our organization to be able to take on those roles that previously only expats would have been, positioned to take. Yeah. So we upgraded the talent in country. We reduced the cost of the business by not necessarily having to depend on expats as much as we had previously. And we really step function improved the capability of the HR team by structuring ourselves the right way and bringing in additional resources.
Wow, it's a big undertaking.
It was a huge undertaking, and it did not happen overnight. I will tell you that these types of things take really, really strong key players, and I had a fantastic team. But it also takes, the wherewithal and the support of the business. If I didn't have a strong business leader responsible for that country, if I didn't have a strong HR team, and if I didn't have a business that supported us and supported the vision, we would have never gotten there.
Yeah. So when you mentioned reducing the expats by 50%, that's obviously an amazing achievement.
It was actually more than that. I just don't remember the exact number, and it's actually very conservative.
Really, if we say 50%, that's still pretty amazing. So I think a lot of companies I speak to would wish to have that type of number. What were some of the things that you did to achieve that? Now, what were the sort of different processes you put in place, or some of the tactics and tools that you used to achieve those results?
Sure. So what we did was we started to take a look at why. Why are we so dependent on expats coming from other parts of the world, whether they were third country nationals or expats from the US? And it really came down to skill set. The skill set for the jobs that we were needing really weren't just about, technical capabilities, although that was a part of it, but it was also about leadership. And we had really, really strong leaders in the organization that we thought had future potential. So we had to decide, how are we going to fast track these people and prepare them to take these positions? Whereas in the past, we hadn't necessarily focused so much on the content of a person's skill set and what was the gap in order to prepare them enough that we could be comfortable that we could put them in a risky, not necessarily risky to them, but risky to the organization in terms of them not necessarily being 100% ready for the job. And so we built a pyramid that defined how we would develop that talent. And we focused on key areas like the engineering organization. We focused on key areas like general management. We focused on key areas like senior leadership for the overall country. And we looked, 2 years out, 3 years out, 4 years out, 5 years out, and decided what needed to be done on an individual basis as well as a collective basis to develop that talent.
Fantastic. So looking back now then, sort of what advice would you give to other HR leaders that are on a similar journey, looking back at and reflecting? What advice do you wish that you had when you were going through it, or for leaders that are going through a similar transformation, what message would you give to them?
I was quite lucky in that I really had the business's support from the very beginning. And I don't know if that was a mix of, I don't know if it was just pure luck or if it was truly a mix of the organization was in such a state of hunger for talent that we had the support, and all I had to do was not mess it up. I had to have a perfect plan that quickly was able to realize some wins, and then it was like a snowball effect thereafter. The more I won, the easier it was to ask and get things. So I guess in that, I would just say that the one piece of advice is, from an HR perspective, is just ensure that you have your value story, your value proposition well laid out, airtight, and don't re-engineer it over and over again. Let your strategy be your strategy, but certainly look to course correct along the way, and then re-engage your support as often as you need. Don't stay gone too long and just say, oh, we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it. You really have to focus on, okay, I've got to do this task and then I've got to promote it. I've got to do this task and then I've got to promote it, so that people understand that, the money is working, that the organization is investing, but then also that, we're all going to benefit from it in the end.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's great advice. First and foremost, you are lucky, unlike many others, that you had support. But I think the key to your success, as you just said, is that you had those successes and then you promoted that internally, and you kept communicating, kept engaging the business, and it's only going to increase the support that you have and allow you to leap forward. So I think that's the key message I'll take away from that, is that a lot of people, they deliver the results and they have the strategy, but you have to keep communicating that internally within the organization, not just once in the
Exactly.
not just in the beginning.
And then also, I would also say that it's not just once in the beginning, it's throughout, but it's not just to the business, it's also to the HR community. So you can get insular in your thinking, and you can be focused on, this is impacting this piece of the business. And so I'm going to talk to the HR people here, and I'm going to talk to the business leaders here. But you also need to be broad and in your communications and transparency about what's happening in your organization, because you never know along the way who can make you better and who can benefit from the work that's happening in one particular team.
Yeah, amazing. So what were some of the outcomes that you had from that, from going through that transformation? What were some of the results?
Well,
one, 50%. Of course, 50%.
Plus reduction
that's a good enough one. With anything else.
And expats, absolutely. We also were able to position the organization where we had stagnant potential talents, like people who we thought had potential growth. We were able to make them not stagnant and actually promote them and move them along the way. Historically, I want to say for the past 7 years plus, the senior position for the organization, for the country, for the region, was always an expat. And that position had always been looked at as, we will always put an expat in that role. We will always, need to do that because we just don't have the talent in country. And we were able, over the course of 3 years, to develop the talent in country and put a local in that role. So that was a huge accomplishment and a huge win for the organization. We were also able to create a level of engagement across the workforce that had never existed before, where employees felt like they had an opportunity to move forward in their careers. And it was sort of planned, but the level of engagement that we got out of it was phenomenal. We certainly didn't expect that. Employees would say things like, wow, never before did I feel like, I could move up 2 or 3 levels in the organization, because I just didn't think those opportunities exist. They've historically always been expatriates. Or, wow, even though I'm not necessarily getting a promotion every year, I have so much more exposure in the organization to senior leaders, and I've developed myself so much over the past 12 or 24 months that I feel like I'm a better employee in the current role that I'm in. And just getting employees to, I'll say, talk HR language like that was a huge accomplishment. Yeah. So the story started to sell itself.
Yeah, well, it's very rare that a company goes through a transformation and actually has a massively positive impact on the culture of the organization. Yes. But it's very clear to see that, they're looking at what you guys are doing, and they see that they can understand their own narrative directly, how it affects them, and that they can see that those opportunities are real and that they're happening around them. So I can only imagine how motivated people must have been after that to see the change that you guys made. So
Absolutely.
great story. So moving forward to where we are now,
Mm-hmm.
what do you feel, talking about skill sets in HR, what skills do you believe will be more important in the future?
I really think that big data will continue to play a big part of the way we do business, not just in HR, but across the organization. And because it will play a big part in the organization, how the financial function and the regulations function looks at supporting the organization, certainly, HR will be impacted by that as well. I think that we will move from, big data in terms of being predictive analytics to prescriptive analytics, where not only can we predict the, then a piece of the formula, but now with prescriptive analytics, we'll be able to understand what it says. Now, that's a little bit scary because it's further and further taking the human factor out of things.
Sure.
But I would love to have that at my fingertips today as an additional, brain or a set of hands to help understand, so that we understand what data is telling us, so that we can move faster and be more effective and efficient in the business. So I would say big data, predictive analytics, moving to prescriptive analytics.
Perfect. And how, I completely agree with you, by the way. I think it's empowering HR as well to be able to, of course, you've got your human element, you've got your intuition, your experience, which is so valuable, but now you also have the data to back it up. So it becomes a very interesting times. Indeed. I think we've seen all of the other functions in the business go through this transformation. Obviously finance has always been driven that way. We've seen marketing go through the same transformation, sales, they're all sort of driven by analytics now. Yes. And now it's HR's turn as well. So it's very interesting time. So how are you preparing yourself? Of course, this isn't a traditional area which many HR leaders are familiar with or the experience. So what are you doing in your, I know it's early days within your own organization, but for you personally, what are you doing to keep yourself up to date with current events? How do you how are you preparing yourself for this change?
I try to do a lot of reading. So I have about an hour commute both ways. And so some of my reading is done via podcasts or TED Talks or anything that I can hear while I'm in my commute. So I get a good 2 hours of hopeful information feedings, unless, I'm on a conference call or something like that on the way in. So I try to maximize my time that way. I also try to stay engaged in the community, the HR community, the business community, and look for platforms where I can participate. Now, time obviously is golden, and so you can't be everywhere and all things, but one of the things that I like to do is leverage my team. So I have a pretty large team, and they go out and they learn, and they come back and they teach. So, you may attend a conference that was 3 hours long via video, and you may walk away with 1 or 2 nuggets, and still that's worth it. I think that the topic is quite new to the world, and exactly what we're going to do with it and how we're going to do it. But I love, some of the platforms that are available to us, like Click. I really, really love that tool. And then other things I do is just try to stay current in terms of how other organizations are using data to drive business decisions.
Mm-hmm. Now, on that point, I think a big part of that is when you have that data, it's about how do you tell the story to the organization. That's going to be a big part of that. Is that now we have data, we need to make it present it in a language that the business is aligned with the business and that the business can understand, and also to make sure that what we're doing around HR analytics is in line with the business's key objectives. There's no point doing analytics for the sake of doing analytics, which many organizations seem to be doing. It's about making sure that there's a business case for it as well.
Yeah, analysis paralysis, I like to call it. And I am a, data-driven decision-making type of person. So I have to be conscious about the effort to not get paralysis from the data. But, a lot of organizations, including Ferring, including Pratt & Whitney, have moved to a more sophisticated HRS system than maybe they previously had. Ferring, we use Workday. And we just are brand new into it, about a year old. And we're not necessarily tapping into everything that it's capable of just yet, but we're excited to understand and unlock some of its capability. Part of that journey is also teaching the organization what to expect of the function, right? So if historically data wasn't necessarily pushed, from an HR perspective in order to make certain decisions, then we have to teach the organization how to expect that of us and how we can lead the organization in that way as well.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the tips that I would say is I was speaking with Microsoft's global head of HR analytics 2 days ago on the podcast, and one of the tips that they gave was you have to educate the business on how you can use it, as you just said. But one of the things that they do there, which is quite interesting, is that the team's always listening to leaders in the business and trying to sort of debunk some assumptions. So whenever they would say, I think this, or they would actually go back in the office and sort of look at the data and say, what you said the other day, actually you're completely right. Here's the data to support it. Or the other way around. You know what you said the other day, actually that's not true. Here's the data to support it. And then that way you're going to get, unfortunately, what will happen is you end up having them knocking at your door from now on, wanting more, which is the problem. But it's a good problem to have.
Sometimes it's hard to turn off that faucet, for sure.
So what have you found in your career? A big part of the success, of course, is engaging the leadership team. And clearly, it seems like you've done that very well. What are some tips that you found to best engage the senior leadership team in the organizations that you work within?
I really don't think that it's rocket science when it comes to that. Relationships have to lead the conversation. And in building that relationship, you have to build credibility. So where you can find quick wins, find those quick wins to build that credibility, and then your relationship will start to build. I think you need to be genuine. And in being genuine, you have to be open to different venues of conversations as well as different times. So instead of going to, we call our cafeteria a restaurant because it's one of our employee propositions for being best in class. We have a Michelin-starred New York chef that cooks for us every day, breakfast and lunch. Just a little bit of a plug for Ferring.
Out there. That's I'm interested.
But instead of just taking your lunch and sitting in a corner so that you can look at your phone and continue to work, actually engage with someone that's sitting there. Join a group that's having a conversation if you can. And, look for ways to translate and be transparent in what's going on in the business. But then as you look to, continue to communicate with different leaders across the organization, you have to be open to where those conversations may take place. They may take place early in the morning. You can pop in. They may take place at scheduled meetings, and maybe it's, on your way back to the office after the meeting. Mm-hmm. And then you have to be flexible. But what's key and what's the common thread across all of it is that as an HR professional, you have to be able to speak their language. So you have to understand, financial statements. You have to understand what a value stream is. You have to understand how that value stream is working and at what points you may have bottlenecks. You have to understand what's happening in the business today, tomorrow, and in the further future.
Fantastic. And in your previous role, did you always make a conscious effort to reach out to these leaders?
Absolutely.
Be the first?
Absolutely.
Because I find that, go on, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, often I think professionals, they schedule their calendar based on their meetings. And if there's a burning topic or an initiative or the transformation project is going on, their calendar will be full of meetings that support that. But they leave, building relationships or communicating with others to just whenever it fits in. And so one of the things that I do is I schedule that time on my calendar. You don't necessarily schedule the meeting with the other person because that can be a little bit awkward, but you block the time to make sure that you do it and that you're conscious about it, and you don't just leave it to, tomorrow, or next week, because then it will never happen.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked that. Many of the people I speak to, the successful HR leaders, they've all make a conscious effort to engage with leaders in the business as much as possible, even in the most difficult circumstances. It's even more important to do that when times aren't going well. So when you would normally not want to have those conversations, it's actually normally the best time to have those conversations in the business. So that's so now within your organization, I'm interested to know what is it that you for any I've never asked this question before, so you're the first person and I'll ask what is it that you guys are looking for in new employees? If there's a message to people that perhaps looking to work within your organization, what is it? What are the key attitudes or skills that you guys are looking for?
Yeah, I would say that I have been already talking around the organization since I've been here about everyone being a talent hawk, right? So what I want my talent hawks to be looking for are for people who come to work with a smile and are ready to change lives, because that's what we do here at Ferring. And in terms of skill set, it's the technical stuff we can get, right? You're going to get a foot in the door. You're going to get the conversation if you've had the right level of experience for the job that we're interviewing you for. So that aside, I'm really looking for people who fit in our culture. And our culture is not one that is bureaucratic, or at least that's not what we want it to be. Everybody has room for improvement in that area. Our culture is not one that doesn't support transparency and honesty. Our culture is one that we want to drive healthy debate, healthy conversation, healthy pushback, so that we can, continue to sharpen each other and make each other better. And so coming to the table with managerial courage, coming to the table with professional polish, great ideas, really, really will set you apart from other candidates. And the more innovative you can be, the better off you will be in terms of being competitive for a role here at Ferring.
Fantastic, very exciting. I'm glad I asked the question now. For anyone out there that wants a good organization to work with in pharmaceuticals, I suggest going after you guys.
Give me a ring.
Give me a ring. You don't want to do that. If you put your number online on LinkedIn, then you're going to have no time for anything. So don't do that. That leads us quite nicely onto the quick fire round, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions. And,
okay.
You have no longer than 30 seconds to give us.
Oh boy. Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. 30 seconds, and I can be long-winded, so let me try.
It's per question, so don't worry.
Okay.
Not for all of them.
Okay.
That would be pretty intense. What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR leader?
In terms of my own ambition, or in terms of within an organization?
Both. Your own personal. Your own. For you personally, what was holding you?
For me personally, at the beginning I told you I am a study of finance. So my undergraduate degree is in finance, and I have a graduate certificate in finance. And so it really was focused on, being in the stock market and in the financial world. And so that made it a little bit difficult for me to decide to transition over to HR. But even before that, before becoming a financial major, I was a physical therapy major. And so that was certainly something I didn't necessarily want to do. I'm glad I didn't end up there. But I thought that because I was so focused on people and wanting to help people, that's where I should be. And then in terms of the organizational structures, I definitely think that being a woman, being a minority has come into play in certain aspects. It'll take a whole, much more time to talk about that. Exactly. But those certainly played a part as well.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So yeah, it's important that you share that, because it's real.
It is real. I've lived it. I know it's real.
And I don't know if I'm assuming by saying this, but also coming from an industry which I presume in aerospace defense and it's predominantly male leaders, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I can only, so very important to mention that. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Lean into your discomfort.
I love that one.
That's self-explanatory, but
yep.
I learned that very early in my career. A mentor said that to me, and it has stuck with me since.
I completely agree with that, and it feels so good once you do that, and you have that. It's a switching mentality, isn't it?
Yes.
More than anything. And once you achieve those results from going towards something that you're afraid of, it's so fulfilling. So yeah, great advice there. What's one book you'd recommend to our audience, and why?
Gosh, I read so much. I would say Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office is the name of the book. And the author is Dr. Lois P. Frankel, I believe. Yeah, Dr. Frankel. Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. The reason for that, You have to read it to find out.
All right, good. Hold it. It's a good title, so we'll
Yes.
keep people intrigued. Could you share one internet resource that you use to increase your own productivity and stay up to date with current events?
TED Talks.
Yeah.
TED Talks for
I think
sure.
I have to get them to sponsor the show now, because between TED Talks and LinkedIn, I think it's very clear that HR leaders, how you guys stay up to date and learn. And I'm a massive fan of both too. So
yeah, I mean, they're wonderful. I love the way that they're organized. I love that they're quick hitters, and I love that, you know, the topics are of a very wide variety.
Yeah, and it goes back to the point we discussed earlier about how people are now consuming content. You know, they're selling time.
Yes.
Get your time back. If you in any business, if you can actually, same with Uber, they're not selling cab journeys, they're selling time.
Exactly.
Time. That's why you get an Uber, because it saves you time.
It saves you time. Flagging down the cab.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, very interesting. And what's one thing about the business that most excites you today?
Our future. We are definitely going to realize our stretch goals of double-digit growth, and we will definitely realize our goals of becoming a world leader in reproductive and women's health. So that is, I am so excited.
You recorded now though, so there's no pressure.
No pressure.
I'm going to play this back to you.
No pressure. No pressure. I'll be waiting for my virtual high five when it happens.
No problem. I'm gonna post it and then say congratulations on there. So I can't wait.
Thank you.
Well, you've been an amazing guest. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I really appreciate the time.
No problem. But give our listeners one parting piece of guidance. If there's one message that you can put out to other HR leaders out there, what would that be?
My message to HR leaders, I think they can apply it both personally and professionally, and that would be to dream bigger. Fantastic.
And if any of our leaders want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
You told me not to post my phone number, so.
No, not your phone number. I wasn't expecting.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, certainly through LinkedIn is a fantastic way. I have the app on both of my phones, so I'm pretty readily available there. So just first name, last name on LinkedIn, and there you'll find, you know, an ability to email me as well.
No problem. I'll link it up in there. Well, look, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Guys, make sure you head over to hrleaders.com. There you'll find all of the show notes on the episode, links to everything we discussed there. Thank you again for sharing the journey, and you've certainly got a long journey ahead of you, and an interesting one. So very excited to speak with you in a few months' time to see where you are.
Yes.
And I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Okay, thank you so much.